You're listening to author Jason Lee Willis read The Summerbird, Chapter 15, Fooled Them All. Split Rock, Minnesota, September 15th, 1997. Clay liked the routine of the school year. Knowing what would happen on an hourly and daily basis soothed him. "The van's here," his mom called out from the doorway. He got up from the kitchen table and walked quickly to the entryway door. His mom held his backpack, which he took and slid onto one of his shoulders. She planted a kiss on his cheek. "Make smart choices at school today." He nodded and pushed open the screen door. The school van had been one of a dozen compromises he and his mother, Nicole, hammered out after his sophomore year, which allowed him to return to public school from homeschooling prior to graduation. Taking the school van meant he had limited interaction with the student body at Split Rock High School, which is what she wanted. "Top of the morning to you, Clay." Arlo, the van driver, greeted him like he'd done the 181 previous mornings. Lauren O'Connor always sat on the passenger side doorway, where a ramp allowed her to roll onto the space where Arlo buckled her chair to the van frame. Each day, she greeted him with a warm, big smile and warm welcome also. After greeting Lauren, Clay sat in the far back seat. At Spider Lake, they picked up another boy from the special education program, Lucas McGovern. Despite being a freshman, the boy had an obsession with G.I. Joe action figures, which kept the two engaged in conversation for about a month. Now they rarely spoke and ignored each other during the 8-minute drive to Split Rock. Unlike the buses, which poured out hundreds of other students in front of the doors at Split Rock High School, the vans drove up to a special parking lot between the gyms and cafeteria where paraprofessional aides waited to collect them. While all the other students were kept in the big commons until the 8 o'clock bell, he passed through nearly empty halls until he arrived in the special education room for the older high school students. He wouldn't see Lauren until the day was done, and he'd eat lunch with Lucas and a dozen other students in a small lunchroom with fewer distractions. Clay's classes lasted for most of the morning, and 30 minutes before the high school kids ate, he'd go down with the other special education kids for a quiet lunch. While the high school kids ate, he'd get his alone time. Some of the other kids, like Lucas, still went on the playground area, but Clay preferred to walk the sidewalk that edged the property. Rain or snow allowed him to be completely alone with his thoughts, which was when he allowed himself to think about Levi. "What happens during my senior year, Levi?" "You made me promise to keep my mouth shut until after my senior year. Why do I have to wait until I graduate to talk to the others about our plan?" He'd never returned to the cave, and true to his word, he never spoke about his brother, especially about all the stuff that happened during the storm. "You know you can trust me to keep a secret, so why didn't you tell me what's special about my senior year? I'm not afraid. If I'm supposed to end up being an old man with a beard and tattoos, I know there's nothing to fear about the coming months. So why didn't you tell me what was going to happen? Is it something good? Is it something bad? I miss you, Levi. I wish we could talk, but I'm only about a third of the way to counting to 914 million. What does that mean? About 20 more years. No wonder I'm bald when we meet again." Shortly after Clay returned from his walk, Austin Hiller arrived. He'd knock on the door and then step inside with his hands in his front pockets. The son of the high school principal was the perfect role model, which is why Clay's mom agreed to the guided supervision. Austin moved to Split Rock in 3rd grade, so neither he nor his father knew what happened to Levi back in 1986. Over the past decade, they'd been allowed to socialize with him, and Austin always showed kindness at parks, parades, and programs. "How's your day going, Clay boy?" Good." Clay was distracted by the freshness of Austin's frosted tips. "I like your Def Leppard shirt," Austin said. "All 90s music is so glum and depressing. Can't beat old-fashioned songs about sex, drugs, and rock and roll." Even the safest boy in the senior class walked on the other side of the line, and Clay had to stop himself from flinching or gasping whenever profanity or inappropriate topics entered the conversation. He'd been sheltered for far too long, and he knew it. Each day, he and Austin had a very specific routine. They'd go up the concession stand and stock the coolers with pop, clean the popcorn machine, and refill the candy. Each day, of course, brought a slightly different task, but it was usually the same. For Austin, it gave him community service hours for his scholarships and such. And for Clay, it let him practice being normal so that one day he'd be able to get a real job. As they approached the concession stand, their routine was interrupted. "Hey, shithead, how's it going?" The question was asked by Victor Berg, who stood in the doorway of the concession stand. "Tolerable," Austin said, straightening up to block the doorway. Clay stood in the corner by the cooler. "You've got study hall this hour, don't you?" "Yep," Victor answered, ignoring Clay. "Do you want to hear crying shame? I was just talking to Summer." "You talking to Summer?" "Well, we've got homecoming coming up and everybody's figuring out dates and such. I didn't want to be standing with my dick in my hand, so I asked her if she's seeing anybody. You know what she told me? Miranda and Summer are dykes." Austin scoffed. "She probably just said that because you're a creep." "Oh, fuck you," Berg recoiled. "Miranda I can understand. She's a dog. But Summer, that body?" Clay groaned a bit, having to be in the foul presence, but neither seemed to notice him now. "I could count the guys she's hooked up with." "Hey, her words, not mine. God, that bitch is hot too. What a loss for humanity," Berg whined and then locked eyes with Clay. "Hey, hand me one of those Mountain Dews." Clay shook his head at the attempted theft. To make Berg go away, Austin handed him a lukewarm bottle. After he'd left, Austin reached in his own pocket, pulled out $1, and set it in the empty drawer that held the cash on game nights. "Berg's poor and has a shitty home life. He's not as bad as he comes off." "Are you sure about that?" After the concession stand, he and Austin would take the longest route possible back to the special ed room. A minute after the bell rang to begin the final period of the day, Clay hustled out the door behind the kitchen, jogged up the hill, and entered the greenhouse, built along the side of the Industrial Technology Building. For one class period each day, he was unsupervised. 2 years ago, his great-uncle Donnie had helped him get a job at a local greenhouse that specialized in produce. And the following summer, Clay worked at a floral greenhouse, tending to all the young plants. Clay liked being around plants. Because of this experience, this year, the high school folks allowed him to vanish from the world of teenagers and into the world of plants in their little greenhouse. At least that was the plan. Since Mr. Rooney didn't have class during that hour, Clay could water plants, repot, clean, prepare fertilizers, or anything else the greenhouse needed. Often, Mr. Rooney would give him tasks. Other times, he'd just figure out what needed to be done on his own. As a fundraiser, the school grew hanging geraniums, which hung above his head on a pole system. Along the top rack, an arrangement of succulents grew where they could keep their roots dry. Directly behind the hanging plants, the tropical and house plants grew where they could absorb any excess water from the geraniums. Kicked out slightly on a bottom tier would be where the vegetables would be grown. Many days, Clay would live the lives of plants that had been save the life of plants that had been vandalized by students going where they shouldn't. A few minutes after he got started watering, Skeeter Jensen warily entered the greenhouse and then ducked back at seeing him. Clay assumed his presence had thwarted another vile deed. A few minutes later, the classroom door opened again. Through the tiers built next to the school wall, Clay could see 2 girls walk into the classroom and make a beeline for the greenhouse door. He was trapped. "There you are," Summer Chauvin said as she leaned in the doorway. She kept one hand upon the greenhouse door as Miranda Penny stood over her shoulder like a shadow. "I remember when we were best friends in kindergarten. Do you remember how we'd sit in the front seat of the bus like Forrest Gump and Jenny?" "That was Joey. I'm Clay." He nodded anyway. "Miranda told me that I got a little crazy on you at the senior shindig, So when I heard they let you out of the special ed room, I figured I could come down and apologize to you. Clay shrugged, hoping she'd just go away. A watering wand and a pruning knife were both within reach, just in case. Summer frightened him. I had a dream about those bus days, Summer added, taking a step into the greenhouse, yet now holding onto the post of the plant rack. It started off like we were kids, just chatting in the front seat behind the driver. But then the bus slid into Lake Manitou and flipped over. To get out, we had to climb up the roof of the bus, and we kept slipping and sliding back into the water. We almost made it to the emergency door, and you reached out to grab my hand, but I slid back into the water. And that's when I woke up. Clay knew the same dream, but the memory didn't belong to Summer. It belonged to a ghost named Danica. So why Clay? Summer asked when he stayed silent. Because I can remember in kindergarten you went by Joey. A decade later, you're now Clay. What's up with that? Clay's hands clasped together nervously at his belly and blurted out, "Is it true that you two are lesbians?" Miranda's eyes tightened like a snake about to strike, but instead of coming closer, she stomped back out of the classroom. Summer didn't take any offense. "Is that a problem?" Clay shook his head quickly. "I know you've been through a lot of shit since we were kids," Summer said, as she heard the classroom door open and close behind them. "But this little routine you've got going, Clay, I still remember when you were in kindergarten. You're not fooling me." Two shadows passed by the classroom windows, drawing Summer's attention. All of her confidence and bluster vanished, and she bolted for the classroom door. Why don't people just leave me alone? "Excuse you," a guy's voice said near the doorway of the greenhouse. A moment later, Nate Marquette stepped into the greenhouse, followed by Skeeter Jensen. "Gumby, my man, how's your senior year treating you?" Clay shrugged. He didn't know how to answer such a broad question. In the background, he saw Summer pause in the doorway. Nate Marquette focused on the plants. "It's true. You're botanical wizard. This shithead said he poisoned a couple plants with a cup of gasoline, and a week later you nursed them back to health. You like plants, huh?" Nate didn't seem scary anymore. Even so, he knew to be cautious. "I like some more than others." "Are you going to work at the greenhouse when you graduate? I heard through the grapevine that you worked at a nursery the past 2 summers. Did they pay well?" The small talk annoyed Clay. "They paid every 2 weeks." "I like plants too. Maybe it's because I hang out with this shithead, but my plants always seem to be sick." "It's probably the pH balance," Clay offered, "or the amount of direct sunlight." "pH balance, huh?" Nate questioned. "I'm just putting this out there, but I'd really like it if you could take a look at them sometime." My mom, she would..." "Not today. But sometime in the future. One day you'll turn 18, and you and I can talk about plants whenever we want. Would you mind if we talked about plants again?" Clay shrugged. "Next time I'll leave this shithead behind. Take care, Gumby." Now agitated by the 2 intrusions, Clay took to cleaning for the last part of the hour until Austin Hiller showed up to make sure he got back down to the classroom with time to gather his stuff and get out to the van. Summer Chauvin held on to the dream with all of her might. Instead of lying alone in her bed at home, she was transported back to middle school, where she was sunbathing on the deck of a pontoon. With her unfocused dream vision, she looked around to see several of her classmates, Madison Ullman, who owned the pontoon, Austin Hiller and Derek Gregory doing backflips off of the nose of the pontoon, and Jude Kaufman, her boyfriend, resting right beside her. Jude didn't need a tan, and his white cowrie shell necklace further accentuated his honey-colored skin. His sunglasses tilted towards her, reflecting her own face. You do know this isn't real, don't you? I know I'm only dreaming, but it seems so real. There's a reason for that. It's what should have been. Everything got changed when you were a little girl. I was supposed to move here and live in the old Larson house. These people would have been my friends, too. This is where we would have had our first kiss, Summer reminded him. If anything, it was an accident. When you and I broke the surface of the water, our heads almost knocked into each other. The kiss was almost inadvertent. Summer desperately wanted to kiss him, but she knew he wasn't real. Where are you, Jude? I suppose I'm out there somewhere. He winked. Why don't you run away and come find me? I can't. Why? Because it would be confirmation that you're crazy? Are you just afraid to find out? I made a promise, Summer began. Her name was Lily. I told her I'd fix the mess that was made. I just don't know how I'm supposed to do that. Jude looked at her solemnly. If you stay, if you try to fix things, they're going to kill you. Summer's heart froze and she swallowed to keep the bile down. Who's going to kill me? Jude sat up on his elbows. One of your classmates. You've seen pieces of this dream in your mind, haven't you? Summer nodded. Yes, but I can't tell the difference between the future and this alternate reality where you were part of my life. Jude winced before saying, if you stay, they will stop you. They? There's more than one? Jude rose to his feet and extended his hand. Summer's classmates remained stuck in the moment. Let me remind you of who you're fighting up against. No sooner had he pulled her to his feet than he dove into the waters of Lake Manitou. The others paid no attention at all, leaving her to make the decision. She sat down in the open doorway, set her feet in the water, and slowly lowered herself into the water. When she opened her eyes, the lake revealed a cavern of 1,000 souls. Some were bright and floated like fireflies near the surface. Others were dark and serpentine, slithering down into the depths. What is this place? Summer asked. Is this hell? Jude floated in the water just below her. No, but it's certainly not heaven either. This place is a tomb with powerful magic built into the stone that keeps anyone who dies near it from continuing on their journey. The spirit of the old woman who woke you as a child is still here. Lily, why won't she answer me? Because she made a mistake by seeking your help and has remained silent so she doesn't make it any worse. They are afraid of what you'll do. If you seek your answers, your path to victory will be tied closely to your death. I don't care, Summer insisted. They took you away from me, and if I can't find you, what's the point of living this stupid life? I'd rather live one life with you than 1,000 lives without you. The only reality where we meet is the one Lily was trying to protect. I'm going to fix this, even if it kills me. Summer woke alone in her bed, and the gasp for air preceded sobs of sorrow. By the time she finished with her shower, she'd pulled herself together and set off for school with one particular goal in mind: figure out who kills her. Tucked into her assignment notebooks was her dream journal, where she not only kept track of everything related to Jude, but also the visions of her other reality. Her classmates and teachers whispered words like bipolar and schizophrenic, along with allegations of drug use. Aware of this, Summer could decide which days she'd be on and engaged, and which days she'd pull the hood of her sweatshirt over her head and vanish for the day. Today, she feigned being off. Who's going to kill me? Summer wrote at the top of her dream journal, shielding it from sight with a backpack and arm. She only needed to close her eyes for a minute to remember the details of the nightmare. Hot blood streaming into her eyes, the sickening crush of bone, the shattering of glass, the sharp cuts upon her palms from that glass, the blinding light and the silhouette that approached. Who are you? She looked around the room at her classmates and tried to reconcile the early fragments of the nightmare. Like the one during Labor Day weekend, she pictured an outdoor senior party where smiling faces became suspects. To murder someone, you need motivation. What would be serious enough to cause someone to kill me? During history class, she vetted Austin Hiller. In the early parts of the nightmare, she could see his laughing face. Austin was calculating and controlled when in public, but with alcohol, he could transform from honor student Jekyll to cruel drunk Hyde. Could it be an accidental murder? In journalism, she found herself pestered by Miranda Penny while completing a worksheet. The moments of indiscretion with Miranda had turned into full-fledged infatuation, a feeling Summer did not fully reciprocate. Summer had been with several guys before she turned to Miranda, but none of them could heal her broken heart from an imaginary relationship with Jude. Although Summer could play the part of jock, scholar, and prep, Miranda could only be an outcast at Split Rock High School. Jealous rage? Do I cruelly cast her aside as she lashes out at me? After writing down the name Derek Gregory, her hand paused. He'd taken her virginity in 7th grade, and the callousness shown in sex had only grown in him since. His eyes would narrow whenever he looked or spoke to her. He thinks I'm trash. And he took any opportunity to slander her reputation. His fury now centered on his girlfriend of 14 months, Madison Ullman, who, according to rumors, took the brunt of his emotional and sexual brutality. Once, Summer had sympathy for him since he was a minority in a predominantly white community, but his protective shell had turned him into a complete prick. If I stuck up for Madison, would he kill me for challenging him? Or better yet, if he was ever alone with me, how would he react? Would he make a move? Would that threaten Madison or release her from the spell she's under? Madison Ullman also viewed her with contempt. Because Derek bragged about his middle school conquest, everybody, including Madison, knew their history. If given a chance, would she purposely hurt me? In study hall, she now had to deal with the sideways glances from Victor Berg. She'd hoped her previous conversation with him would shut him up by implying she was a lesbian. However, close to the mark it really was. It didn't really seem to have the same effect she'd hoped. At first, Summer thought his stolen stares were some pornographic fantasy he was picturing. With each passing day, however, the greasy dirtbag seemed to be getting closer and closer to crossing a line, but was too cowardly to act. In her fragmented nightmare, she could picture his hands all over her body. Is he some budding serial rapist picking me for his first victim? She could not take her notebook with her to the final day of the class, PE. Contemplating mortality did not put her in the mood for games and exercise, and with one comment from Skeeter Jensen, she blew up and cursed at him in front of the whole class and the gym teacher, who sent her to the office. She grabbed her dream journal from her locker on the way to the office. While she waited for the principal, she pondered Skeeter. If Hiawatha County had a criminal underworld, Skeeter had connections. A good old boy, but also a dangerous guy if you wrong him. Summer acted demure when called into the principal's office, leaving him no choice but to assume Skeeter had it coming. Without any protests or accusations, Summer was given a warning. Instead of going back to gym, she ended up in the greenhouse. She watched the tall, placid Clay McPherson prune and transfer a geranium to a new pot for the winter. Hatred for the enigmatic Levi McPherson had been planted in her heart over a decade ago, and even though she didn't understand the circumstances of his death, she hated Levi for taking Jude away from her. But Joey? Joey had been her friend, and obviously Levi had changed his little brother for the worse also. But is he my only ally in this? Perhaps he's the one who will understand me. She stepped through the doorway. So how long have you and Nate been friends? Not only did Clay flinch at the sound of her voice, but he immediately became nervous when he saw her. Yep, he knows something. He reminded her of a beaten dog. Hey, I'm not going to bite. He swallowed twice. Can I help you? I don't know, Summer said as she took a few more steps closer to him. A 3-step ladder rested in front of the rack of plants, and she sat upon the top step. I hope you can. I could use the help, that's for sure. Well, what's wrong? He asked, still unsure of what to do with his hands, so he clasped them together in a fig leaf pose that amused her. I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep doing what you were doing, Clay. And he did. He went right back to tending the plant with only an occasional side eye in her direction. She wanted to blurt out about the spirits, but instead treaded carefully. So why do you want people to call you Clay instead of Joey? He shrugged, and his eyes looked to the nearby clay pot. He picked it up as if testing its weight and said to her, Omadai. Then he set the pot down and kept working. I don't understand what that means. After a moment of hesitation, he answered nonchalantly. My Gigi Lily was a full-blooded Indian, and she used some of her words when she was around us. My mom named me after Joseph from Genesis, the one with the robe, but Gigi wanted to call me Powabik, which translates as clay. A lot smarter than he lets on. I didn't even know you were Indian. His eyes squinted before his eyebrows raised, as if he was having a private conversation with himself. Just an eighth. I'm just as much Scottish in me, but I'm not going around wearing a kilt. Summer laughed. He's funny and jaded, too. My Gigi and brother died the same month, and after they were gone, I could just hear her voice echoing in my head. Powabik. I just felt more like Clay than Joey after that. I remember hearing about their deaths, Summer began, ignoring the reminder that the ghost of Lily had visited her in the days afterwards. That must have been really tough. Levi died by suicide. My sister Penelope kind of hates my guts. Did you have a good relationship with your brother? Clay nodded, then rolled his eyes. This feels right. Instead of being my enemy, perhaps he was also a victim of Levi. Maybe he can help me fix things. I think you and I should hang out more, Summer declared. Clay looked up, panicked. Why? We're not like the other kids, are we? I remember hanging out with you for recess while the other kids were playing kickball and such. You were the only kid in our class that I liked, and then suddenly, you were gone. My mom. Oh, I get it. My mom is a real piece of work, too. My older sister Penny can do no wrong, and I'm the Antichrist when I make the smallest mistakes. Clay chuckled. When my brother died, my mom changed. She's afraid of her own shadow. I'm surprised she even lets me come to school, but she knows I'll be an adult soon, so she's trying to keep her hooks in me by giving me some freedom. Bitchy moms and broken brains, Summer summarized. We should start our own club, huh? Clay nodded. So, do you mind if I stay? Suit yourself. Talking to him made it feel like a broken piece of her childhood had been returned to her. She watched as Clay finished with the potted plants and then turned to the chemicals and liquids in the corner of the greenhouse. Like a chemist, he carefully measured and mixed as he prepared 3 gallons. What a strange kid. He continued even as if she wasn't even there. It humored her to watch him work, but then reality returned when the classroom door opened. Nate Marquette glided through the classroom and slid into the doorway of the greenhouse. Unlike Clay, Nate's social skills were highly honed, and he showed no reaction to seeing her. Hello, Summer, he said without missing a beat, and then his forced smile and calculating eyes turned to Clay. How's your day been, Gumby? Summer watched in spellbound horror as the 2 most damaged boys in her graduating class chatted like buddies. She worried he was using Clay. Both had experienced tragedy as children, and they healed in completely different ways. While they talked about types of plants, she could not help but notice how Nate discreetly picked up the 2 jugs of fertilizer. "Well, take care, Gumby," Nate said, and then turned to Summer. "See you around, Summer. Don't forget about the money you owe me." His cold pleasantries chilled her to the core. Is he the one who will kill me? "I'll ask again," Summer said once Nate left the classroom. "How long have you and Nate been friends?" Clay shook his head. "We're not really friends." "Sure seems that way." The 2 jugs of fertilizer were not going to be used to grow houseplants, Summer suspected. Does Clay have a clue? Clay looked at the evidence that contradicted him, the 3rd jug of fertilizer. "I don't know. I felt like I owed Nate for what happened to his family. Some people think my brother might have had something to do with it." Damn. Is Nate using emotional extortion? Clay looked her right in the eyes unflinchingly. "I need to close things up before Austin arrives." Just like that, he closed her off. "Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll get out of your hair." As she retreated to the door, she paused to glance back. If Nate can extort him, perhaps I can get Clay to help me too. Chapter 17. The Unkindness of Ravens. Old Copper Road, September 21st, 1997. Clay was already awake when he heard the footsteps coming up the stairs. When the door handle jiggled and the old hinges creaked, he sat in his computer chair, calmly turning to face the door. "Oh, you're up," his mom said. Your father's not feeling well this morning. Could you help Dan with chores today?" Clay nodded. It wasn't the first time he'd filled in for his father for chores. More and more, his father's cough preceded a few days in bed. He'd heard his father coughing at supper the previous day, so the request didn't surprise him. After picking appropriate clothes, Clay went downstairs to where his mother doted on Daniel, his older brother. Even though Daniel was only 20, his short hair and farmer attire made him look like a middle-aged man. Daniel's love of beer drove him to get an apartment for the summer after he graduated, but his love of farming brought him back home every morning. Since moving out, Daniel and Mom got along much better. "Good morning, Clay," Dan greeted him politely before taking another bite of breakfast. Like Clay's peers at school, Dan treated him like some alien specimen that deserved isolation. Daniel was country, whereas Clay was heavy metal. But to make things easier, Clay also wore denim work boots and a flannel shirt. Daniel was a man of few words, and he said nothing as the two went out to the barn. Normally, he spoke in grunts and nonverbal gestures. From what Clay could tell, Daniel liked feeding the livestock, tossing hay bales around, and fixing stuff, even though profanities would accompany each task. For his part, Clay didn't mind doing chores. Despite being younger, he was much bigger than Daniel, and when called upon, he could summon surprising strength. "After I graduate," Clay broke the silence of hard work, "do you think I could come live with you?" Daniel looked horrified. "Me? What's wrong with living at home? You've got the whole upstairs to yourself." "I know, but Mom never lets me do anything." "I understand that," Dan responded with an eye roll. Once the routine in the main barn was completed, Daniel grunted and led the way to the big pole barn. Levi's black Mustang remained hidden under a blue tarp near a boat and a few snowmobiles. Dan went right over to the ATVs. "Take the green one. We got to move the heifers to the north pasture." It was a chore he enjoyed. Their cousins lived 2 miles southeast of their farm, so Clay got to have the thrill of racing full speed across Market Street before following the gravel road to the second farm site where Great Uncle Donnie lived. Terrifying cows with ATVs was even more fun, and together with Donnie and the other McPherson cousins, they moved a few hundred cows through the narrow gate separating the fields. "Dang, Clay, why the heck aren't you playing basketball for the Bulldogs this winter?" Great Uncle Donnie asked during a break. Clay shrugged, and the spotlight of the conversation moved off him. After 10 minutes of inane farmer talk, Clay finally asked, "Can I go home now?" "Nothing stopping you," Dan muttered. Clay didn't take affront for not fitting in with the farmers. He had a plan for the stolen time, after all. He'd been thinking about it in recent days, and today he finally had the opportunity to investigate why Fozzie warned about a witch in the willow. Today, he'd go find out if there was a problem. Instead of returning through Split Rock, he went a mile south and came up the old Carousel Park Road. At the old Carousel Park corner, he turned west. The hill overlooking Mesquite Shores Bible Camp was the point of no return. The road either turned down to the camp or back south. The old Nielsen farm remained on the hill, and beyond, the marsh that fed Giba Hollow. To get to the willow, Clay had to trespass. And with the ATV, trespassing was quite easy. He took the ATV as close to the ravine as the thick brush allowed and walked the rest of the way. Since he was a child, he'd known about the reality of the shadow demons, the ghosts, and the ever-watching ravens. But just as his memories of his brother slowly faded away, so too did the power that brought by Halley's Comet. For the dark spirits to upset the ravens, something had to be stirring them. Clay knew better than to go to the cave along the Blue Knife River, so he went to the only other place that could give him reliable answers. The peculiar-looking willow tree that spoke to his brother loomed over the ravine that fed Lake Manitou. Its canopy reached high, and its tendrils created a curtain of foliage that touched the rocky ground at its base. It had been 2 years since his last visit, and then, like now, he dared not step under the tree. Instead, he looked to the branches. Fozzie the Raven had crashed through Levi's bedroom window and changed their lives. All ravens were smart, but this ebony stranger could put entire phrases together. And when Joey looked into its eyes, he didn't see a dumb bird, but a full consciousness like a real person. Clay missed Fozzie almost as much as he missed his brother, and if Fozzie returned, perhaps Levi would... No, that's not the plan. I've got a lot of counting to do still. Keeping his safe distance, he studied the looming monstrosity. This tree is not a normal willow. It must be some hybrid species. A dozen eyes looked down on him, ravens. "I've been having dreams lately," Clay confessed aloud. "Sometimes I see things from the past, but there are times I see things that might be more than just my imagination. Something bad is going to happen." Individually, the ravens turned their heads, shifted weight, and fluffed feathers, but collectively, none of them responded to him. 2 summers ago, at the 10-year anniversary of Levi's death, the ravens also gave him no response either. Do I tell them about Summer? "I know I'm supposed to be counting," Clay added. "I know I should be more patient and just wait for the stuff Levi told me about to come true. But the dream I've been having since I was a kid, I think it means something." Again, no response. "Do you guys happen to know Fozzie? I'd really like to talk to him." The ravens began to vocalize. Their ruckus grew louder and louder, causing Clay to cover his ears and take a few steps back towards his ATV. A single bird flew from the marsh and settled onto a dead oak branch near the tree. The fluff normally found at the base of its beak had receded to show wrinkled dark skin. Near its legs, several feathers created a skirt of sorts. Instead of rich black feathers, its feathers were dull. Fozzie's old. "Dream," the bird blurted out. Clay nodded. Yes, the dream. I don't know why I keep having it or what I'm supposed to do." "Die," Fozzie said, and behind him the other ravens added, "Die, die, die." "Am I supposed to stop it?" Clay shouted back over the din. "Help," Fozzie countered. She needs my help, Clay realized. I need to stop the dream from happening. Suddenly, in the presence of a supernatural opportunity, Clay stepped forward to ask another question. How's my brother? Is the plan still? The ravens grew silent. A figure appeared under the willow. Look at you, all grown up. A familiar voice called out from under the willow. It must be your senior year. It was Levi. He was still 16. She'll be coming here, Joey, and you need to be ready to help her when she gets here. Why are you under the willow? Clay asked. I'm in your past. It's still 1986 for me. We haven't even gone to the cave yet, but seeing you standing there, it tells me I'm going to do the right thing. I miss you, Clay whispered. Are you still counting? Levi asked. Clay nodded. The raven will bring you back here when the time is right, but it's going to still be a long time before you'll see me again. Can I count on you to keep our secret a little longer? Clay nodded vigorously. The raven will lead you back, but I won't be here when you return. We can do this, Joey. He took a step forward and then vanished. Fozzie leapt from the branch and flew east, leaving the other ravens in silence. Clay followed the old bird out of the ravine, but when he had reached the ATV, the bird was nowhere to be seen. Just like Levi, I need to be brave with all the bad things that are coming. Chapter 18, New Tricks. Split Rock, Minnesota, September 21st, 1997. So we've got a canine serial killer. Brian Forsberg realized as the group of kids showed him where they'd found the dog's corpse. Okay, kids, I can take it from here. You shouldn't be on this side of the creek. It's private property. At their guilty expressions, he continued, You shouldn't be playing in the creek either. I know the water's low, but... Forsberg searched for words that didn't involve spook stories. Take a hike, kids. He herded the group of 3 boys back up the slope to the big concrete Crow Wing River Bridge, watching the boys cross back over the southern shore before he retrieved a black evidence bag and gloves from his SUV. Then he paused for a moment to look down on Old Mill Park. When Chuck Looning served as mayor of Split Rock, he helped turn the old Fisher sawmill into a city park. But once he began serving as a state legislator, suddenly the funds began to flow in. The old dirt road, boat dock, and collapsed building had been transformed into a museum to the lumbering days of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox. For Brian, it served as a tombstone for Albert Fisher and his childhood friend Chris Looning. He returned to his SUV where a personal 9X bag phone rested under the passenger seat. He pulled the corded receiver off its base and punched in the numbers. Carson had purchased bag phones for the entire Asante Lodge to help them in communication. Carson answered immediately. What's up? Are you going to be around this afternoon? I was thinking about going for a walk, but I tell you what, I'll hang around home. Forsberg ignored Carson's dark humor. I've got a situation that could use your expertise. Use that fancy computer of yours to investigate the significance of killing dogs. Dead dogs? You know, satanic shit and such. But focus on local incidents through the years. I want to know if this recent outbreak of dead dogs has supernatural significance or if it's just the act of some motherfucker that I want to curb stomp. Fun way to spend an afternoon. Thanks, Brian. Carson hung up. While Forsberg certainly had more official duties to attend to, he took this situation personally. Forsberg's foul mood grew worse when he had to lift the already rotting corpse to get the bag under the dog's body. Despite the stench and decay, Forsberg gave the dog one final pet upon its brow and an ear before closing the bag. He hoped to collect ballistic information from the dog's body to add details to his investigation. After setting the dog in the back of the SUV, he rolled down all of his windows and drove up the hill to Fisher Mansion. As soon as he arrived, Wally Crane came shuffling out of the garage, which resulted in having to give him a recap of the dead dog theory. "So, old man, any situations like this ever happen on your watch?" Wally focused on wiping off the grease from his hands and with a hanky. "Can't say I recollect. Foul deed, though. What are you thinking?" Standing with his old confidant, he allowed himself to explain the theory behind the evidence. It used to be that a human death would be used to wake the sleeping Tokpai that dwelled around Lake Manitou. You've heard Ansel's theories that they never went back to sleep after Lily died. If they stayed active, then they've got to feed, right? Wally nodded, but his brow wrinkled. "I thought you said these dogs had been shot." "Yeah, so much for that thought." "Yeah, shit. Yeah, I don't know why, but it feels more sinister than some drunk asshole shooting dogs. Being vigilant is nothing to be ashamed of. I wish I'd acted on a few hunches. It's better to feel foolish than live a life filled with regret." Forsberg felt a twinge of sadness. Wally had once been such a strong man, but now he seemed half of his former size. Hiawatha County took a lot out of him. "Yeah, well, I figured I'd run it by the computer whiz to see what he thinks." "I'll leave it up to you then," Wally said, gesturing to the garage. "I got a snowblower engine torn apart, so I should put Humpty Dumpty back together again before I forget where the parts go." Forsberg knocked on the door before punching in the security code. Big Mac walked into the entryway from the living room area as he entered, chewing a piece of gum, a sign he'd already been drinking in the early afternoon. Instead of his priestly garb, he now wore a bright tie-dye shirt with bold letters that read, "Jesus is Lord." Big Mac greeted him with a firm handshake. "Good to see you, Brian." "Likewise. I got the full story about Ansel's scar. You boys sure have seen some crazy shit. How are you holding it up?" Par for the course. Par for the course. What's new?" Big Mac had been attached to the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment in Vietnam, but a few years of hanging out with Ansel led him to drinking. Another towering figure brought low by Hiawatha County. Forsberg gestured toward Carson's office. "Doing a bit of private investigating. I'll tell you about it the same time I explain it to Carson." After explaining the evidence to both Carson and Big Mac, all three sat in rolling chairs in front of the bank and computers. "At least we're not talking about dead people," Carson said, dismissively after listening to the details. "Yeah, I know, but whoever is doing this is a sick individual that needs to be stopped. Or am I crazy to get this worked up?" "I think dead animals resonate deeply with us because humans were originally fashioned to be caretakers in the garden," Big Mac offered. He tried not to scoff at the odd answer. "So what did the internet tell you?" Forsberg asked Carson. Carson perked up. Even though he'd been a computer whiz, he remained a bit scatterbrained. "Remember David Berkowitz? The son of Sam?" "Right. Well, he got a lot of hits because he believed the neighbor's black dog used to speak to him about the killings, right? That led me to a bunch of hits for hellhounds, like in Ghostbusters or The Omen. The mythology of hellhounds go back all the way to Ares and his dogs of war, as well as Cerberus guarding the underworld. But all those dogs were supernatural guardians, right? And not normal dogs. So I changed my search engine and keywords. Instead of hellhounds, I found a bunch of old legends that dogs could sniff out demons. Sometimes they growl and bark at something that wasn't visible to the human eye. I found a bunch of stories like that." "Interesting," Forsberg admitted. "I concur," Big Mac added. "A lot of primitive societies believe dogs can sense demons." "Concur? Is he half tipsy this time of day?" Anything biblical about dogs?" Big Mac shook his head. "Mostly negative connotations, but nothing related to demons. I mean, there is the incident where Jesus confronts the Gerasene demon. Legion, right?" "Right. When Jesus finds this possessed fellow, he's about to cast the demons out when the demon asks to be thrown into the herd of pigs instead of being cast into the abyss. Ultimately, Jesus gets the last laugh when the Possessed pigs run right off the cliff and into any water anyways. It begs the question, though, why did the demons need Christ's permission to enter the pigs in the first place? Huh, Carson said and slid down 2 computers. He feverishly began to type. What are you thinking? Forsberg asked after sliding over for a better look. I've cataloged every scrap of Asante lore that we know. I've got everything from Father Guerin's journal to newspaper clippings, even Wally's conversation with Lily. This computer is a database, everything we know about the mysteries of Lake Manitou. Here we go. He paused, squinting. Yep, here it is. And? Carson pointed to the highlighted passage. Back in 1898, Lily's neighbor just snapped and killed her mother and grandfather before trying to murder her too, Adam Thunderface. Demonic possession? Big Mac asked. That's what Lily thought. According to what Lily shared with Wally, she claims she woke the 12 Talk Pie accidentally, and during one encounter they followed her home. Before they found her, they found her neighbor, Mr. Thunderface. Let's check out this other hit. Carson scrolled down to the document. Well, we might have something here. I've got a newspaper story. Boy, these bastards were blatantly racist back then. It's no wonder the Battle of Sugar Point happened with inflammatory accounts like this. Rampaging savage. Thunderface did kill 2 innocent people, Big Mac offered. If he was in his right mind, Carson countered. Hey, Brian, your grandfather gets a mention. Young Bjorn Forsberg pinned down the savage on Deadwood Island with rifle fire until the posse arrived, Carson pointed out. And make it 3 victims. He killed Jonas Penny when the posse tried to confront him on the island. Wowzers. Carson scrolled a bit further. Brian spotted the highlighted word and read aloud. Included in the deadly rampage was a dog owned by Jeremy Bordeaux, which was found dead earlier in the morning by Martin Nielsen. All 3 leaned away from the computer and quietly contemplated. We know that Talk Pie are capable of possessing a person, Big Mac began. And dogs have some sort of innate sense of demons, Carson added. Big Mac sobered. So if Adam Thunderface ran into a pack of Talk Pie and got himself possessed, it not only explained why he turned psycho on his neighbors, but also why he killed the Bordeaux dog. Nicely done, Carson. Forsberg patted him on the shoulder and stood. McGeesey spent the final years of his life trying to hunt down 2 of the Talk Pie, only to have one hide in Nancy. I knew this was a bad sign. What are you going to do? Big Mac asked. Supernatural shit? That's for you and Ansel. I'll swing by his place and let him know what we've learned. But first, there was need for an autopsy and a burial, so he had headed over to his place to deal with the most recent dead dog. Chapter 19. Whence All Waters Rise. Split Rock, Minnesota, September 22nd, 1997. Summer Chauvin knew where to find answers, but was afraid to go there. Part of her wanted to leave Hiawatha County and never look back, but another part didn't want to back down from a fight. Then what do you want to do? Miranda Penny asked impatiently. The 2 sat in Summer's Mercury Capri parked in the driveway. Summer? I'm not going to Madison's stupid party, Summer insisted. Not until I unscramble my head. Have you not been listening to what I said? Then what? You need to help me get answers, Summer said, glancing back at the bag in the back seat. Part of her wanted to push Miranda away to keep her safe. Another part needed a friend. Until she could bridge the chasm between herself and Clay, Miranda was all she had. A seance? Miranda softened a bit. Then why can't we just stay here, or at the treehouse? We need to get closer to the lake. We need to find a stronger place to talk, Summer reminded. She thought how bad weather often amplified the energy of the lake. She also remembered going under the Fisher Willow when she was a bold child and how a storm almost ripped the curtain of reality. Let's go back to Bleeding Rock." "You sure? Just the two of us?" Summer nodded and put the car into drive. Just like with the senior party a few weeks ago, Summer parked at the big lot of Old Mill Park. She gathered up her heavy bag, stepped out of the car, but then took a moment to stare up at the stars. If Lily won't speak to me, perhaps someone else will. This is the only way. The two labored up the rocky path that led to the top of the granite ridge, and once on top, the trek became much easier, as if walking on an ancient sidewalk. For the first part, houses could be seen below the bluff, built along the channel of Carousel Island. Then the shore vanished, and they were alone in the darkness. Between the beer cans and stacked stone in nookshuks, Bleeding Rock could not be missed, even in the darkness. Summer reached into her bag side pocket and handed Miranda a lighter and a few candles. A few minutes later, the stage was set, and the ritual began. Miranda had been the one to first explore a seance, and by the time their friendship bloomed, she already had accumulated backgrounds from books, tattoo parlors, and crystal shops in downtown Brainerd. So when Summer pulled out her dream catcher, Miranda stopped with a wrinkled brow. "What's that?" "A broken promise," Summer answered cryptically before explaining. "It's a dream catcher that was made by an old woman I met at my mom's nursing home." "Why'd you bring that? Isn't it used for dreams? I thought you wanted to speak to the dead." "Unless I'm imagining it all, I have used it to speak to the dead. Once I saw an old woman through the webbing. It reminded me of the magic mirror from Sleeping Beauty. She was one of my imaginary friends, but in her case, she was dead. At first, our connection was really strong, but after a few days, it just stopped working. I thought by bringing it here, it might, recharge it or something." "I don't think it works like that." "How would you know?" "Your dead lady made that?" "She did." "I thought you wanted to speak with one of the dead kids who were murdered here," Miranda bitterly clarified. "I'd be willing to speak to anyone who can help." "Shouldn't we be focusing on one of them?" "It doesn't really matter who I talk to. I figured I could just find out what happened to them. I might be able to, figure out what's happening to me." "Having an item from the person helps." Summer jiggled the dream catcher. "Lily died at Golden Shore, so I figured she still might be around to help me." Summer dug out another relic from her childhood encounter. "She gave me these too," she said, holding the yellow piece of paper. "I think they were spells or something." "The dream catcher should be enough. Set it inside the circle." The ritual found in online chat rooms resumed, and for the next 20 minutes, the cold of the stone seeped into Summer's body as Miranda spoke to the darkness. Then candles flickered. A cold draft passed in front of Summer. Something had answered our cry for help. Miranda sensed it too. Her hands went to the Ouija board, and she repeated the rehearsed lines. Summer tried to be patient while Miranda asked her questions and waited for her fingers to be directed to the next letter. But instead, curiosity forced her hand. She leaned forward and picked up the old dream catcher. Summer felt the hairs on her neck stand on end. An adult woman stood near the glow of the candles. She was neither old nor indigenous, and her blonde hair formed two braids that came together near the middle of her back. Summer lowered the dream catcher and nodded to Miranda. "Tell her to sit with us." Miranda gathered herself and intoned, "Come, spirit, join our circle." Summer watched through the dream catcher as the pale woman cautiously approached. "Clever girls. You've used the magic from the branches of Layrad to call me." The spirit assessed the other items decorating the circle of flame. "Why have you woken me from my slumber?" In a sudden panic, Summer turned to Miranda. "Can you hear her?" Miranda shook her head. "She's here at her circle." Or am I insane? Have her spell her name. Miranda focused on the board, and the planchette began to move. It slowly began to identify letters. S-A-A-R-A. Sarah? Miranda asked. The apparition moved her hand and looked coldly at Summer. Why must we play these games when it is clear that you have the ability to see and speak with the dead? I had to just make sure you were real, Summer admitted, and not just something created in my mind. Death is not what I expected, Sarah remarked. I am trapped in this cursed place. The others tried to warn me about Vergelmir, but I was too excited to visit to weigh the consequences of what would happen if I was murdered here. You were murdered? But not by the hand of an enemy. I was murdered by the hand of an ally, so that our purpose was not discovered. He performed a kindness of sorts, although neither of us fully understood this place. He's here with me too in this swamp of souls. Sarah turned her focus from the past to the present. Was that your plan, to trap me here for all eternity? My plan? Sarah nodded. You're the one who lured me here. I came from my place atop the world to the swamp from whence all waters rise. I came here because you promised to give us the answers we wanted. You were supposed to help, but instead we were killed. No, I didn't. Images of being under the willow in a thunderstorm filled her mind. We just called you here today just to make sense of the dreams I've been having. I thought I could better understand this place, then I'd learn what to do to stop it from happening. Sarah studied Summer so closely that it chilled her, forcing her to swallow hard. You're older now than when you visited us. You're no longer a child, are you? More images of that strange moment filled her mind. She'd only been a child. It happened right after Lily's death. The weather grew worse and the willow channeled powerful magic. What's wrong, Summer? Miranda asked. Did I break the world when I snuck under the Fisher willow? Did I cause all this to happen? No, focus. The spirit is lying to me. She thinks I'm responsible for her death. You are responsible for my death, Sarah snapped. Should I end the ritual? Miranda asked, clearly frightened, but Summer shook her head and stared back at the apparition. I've never met you before, I swear. Your face is different, but your voice is the same. I heard your song in the branches of Layrad, and you told us all about the Wintermaker and the Trickster, and how they were about to destroy the world. You begged us to come here, to save you and your precious Jude. We came and stepped into your murderous trap. No, something's not right, Summer answered, but she remembered singing the words on the yellow paper smuggled out of the nursing home. She'd voiced Lily Guerin's words. She'd even snuck under a willow tree to sing them, but nothing happened, at least until the storm drove her away. All that happened a decade earlier. The time didn't match. Wait, when did you die? The spring of 1962. We came looking for the Wintermaker, but the old crone's magic stopped us, and then her allies made sure we never left. The old crone? Lily? She was helping me. I wasn't born until 1980. How could I be the one who tricked you into coming here? You don't understand the power of Layrad. Neither did I. When we spoke to you, I didn't comprehend that you could be speaking to us from the future. We rushed here to our deaths, and you weren't even born yet. There were others. Her imaginary friends were real under the willow. Is that what I remember? Was Sarah one of my imaginary friends? Summer calmed her racing heart and hastened breathing to ask, What is Layrad? You hold a piece of the ancient tree, Sarah said, motioning to the dreamcatcher. Layrad is as old as time itself, and at 3 places it rises out of the earth. When you touched its branches here in Vergelmir, I was touching the branches in the land of giants. Your cry for help rippled back in time, but here we are, finally solving a problem. Summer labored to produce enough saliva to even swallow. So are my dreams of death real? Likely. Wise Odin used Layrad to look into the future to glimpse his death, and despite all his machinations, it came exactly as he dreamt it. I am trapped here in the swamp of souls because I failed to understand this lesson. It might be easier for you to just accept your fate and enjoy the days you've been given. Are all my imaginary friends just souls trapped in Lake Manitou? This life I'm living isn't even my fate. I have a different destiny. It is a shame we never got to meet in life. Your blood holds powerful magic, and if you'd been properly trained, you could have changed my fate and the fate of so many others. It's not over until it's over, Summer boldly stated, even though she feared she was running out of time. Perhaps you and I could still be allies. Sarah looked at Miranda, who only heard one side of the conversation. Offer me her blood, and I will tell you more. Summer gasped at the suggestion. A voice from the darkness shouted, Begone, Sarah Oliventar, or I shall cast you down into the depths. Summer gasped when she saw Lily Guerin rush forward, driving Sarah away in a gust of wind. The Ouija board flipped, bringing a frightened squeal from Miranda, who began to back away. You young fool, Lily said. Your restless heart will destroy everything. These spirits will feast upon you like wolves upon a deer. Stay away from this place. Miranda pulled at her arm to leave. Lily, you asked for my help. I'm trying to help. Tell me what I need to do. It's too late. I made a grave mistake by involving you. Now it must run its course. Miranda was crying, and Summer felt as if her arm might pop out of its socket. A mistake? Stay away from Lake Manitou, or you will only make matters worse. Lily vanished, leaving only a frantic Miranda. Summer allowed herself to be pulled away from the scene. But what about Jude? Chapter 20. The State of Minnesota versus St. Paul, Minnesota, September 23rd, 1997. While State Senator Chuck Looning waited, he scanned the menu at Laughing Waters for something recognizable. As the descendant of a lumber baron, he felt a bit of shame as he looked over a menu that had been decolonized, which meant no pork, no chicken, and no beef, and instead featured too many locally grown vegetables. He tossed the menu aside with a sigh. Ayanna Mays, his young legislative assistant, returned from the bathroom. Isn't this place just wonderful? Mays had been a Native American activist at Bemidji State University and helped secure the northern half of District 4 during the election. With his flat-top haircut and her long flowing ebony hair, the two did not appear to belong together, but Ayanna was as familiar to him as his shadow. Remind me again who we're meeting? Ayanna looked up from the menu. Paul Nowaski and Lydia Archer. The two from the Iron Range? Mays nodded. One hand washes the other. It's on the MIAC board, and she's an environmental lobbyist. So be patient when they explain what they want for their districts. There's old money in the Iron Range, which helps us in the long run. For them to want this meeting, they must have come across some hot gossip. After the last election, Chuck rose up the seniority list and became part of 3 committees: Veterans, Infrastructure, and Education. Now with some chips in the game, he could better help his district, especially his home at Lake Manitou. While their enemies had corporate empires with vast resources, he now had the eyes, ears, and pocketbook of state government. Nowaski and Archer showed up a few moments later, and the conversation was focused entirely on the new restaurant with indigenous cuisine. Archer had been a lobbyist for too many lunches, but he knew the plump, middle-aged Ojibwe woman would steer Nowaski in whatever direction she deemed proper. As a veteran politician, Nowaski took control of the conversation as soon as he sat down. His double chin jiggled as he told jokes and shared anecdotes. Both women seemed comfortable in the moment, but Chuck kept a low profile. After a few minutes of conversation, Chuck's order of bison picana arrived, and he focused on the comparison of pumpkin seed oil to the Crisco his wife used. He quietly savored each bite, while the other 3 did the heavy lifting of the conversation. Chuck ran on the good old boy platform, using his military service and time as a small town mayor to get the rural farm vote. But in his heart, he sympathized with the 12 tribes in the MIAC, detested what had been done to the land in pursuit of iron, and viewed himself as a progressive on social issues despite his personal backstory. So once he finished his plate, he grew impatient. "Okay, cut to the chase. What's the buzz you were hearing?" Chuck stared at Paul Nowaski, who seemed hurt that the conversation had to end. May's eyes grew stern with disapproval. "Lawyers," Nowaski said as he dabbed his mouth with his napkin. "Lots and lots of lawyers. Constitutional experts, historians, mineral rights, which is where I caught the buzz. More recently, lawyers have been talking to the Indian Affairs Council, which is when both Lydia and I realized something big was happening." Nowaski looked to Archer, who took her cue. She smiled, yet had bitter eyes. "Let me explain in the context of history. In the 1800s, the United States government negotiated in bad faith," Ayanna chimed in quickly. "Yes, they negotiated with the tribes of Minnesota as if they were sovereign nations," Archer continued. "All this nobility quickly fell apart, and the treaties were ignored. All of us sitting here know this. A century ago, the Dawes Act tried to destroy the reservation system by shifting the land from the tribe to the individual. Little by little, piece by piece, the reservations were gobbled up by private and land sales, which is why many tribes are now trying to use gambling profits to purchase lost land," Ayanna added, again, clearly trying to impress her older peers. "I'm following," Chuck prompted. In his district, he had 2 of the 12 reservations, Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe and Mizhike Band of Ojibwe. "Usually, these matters are easily resolved, but in the case of your district, things got a little complicated," Nowaski finished. "What's the problem?" Chuck said, hoping for a simple answer. "Leases," Archer answered. "Instead of just selling the land, the folks at the Mizhike Band of Ojibwe leased their lands." "They hired better lawyers, apparently," Nowaski teased. "Shit, Turtle Island Jesuit School is leased land, isn't it? Is that what this is all about? So, who's trying to do what?" "With these leases expiring or expired, the property is supposed to revert back to the family." "Of course," Chuck agreed. From what he understood, Father Guerin convinced Big Squeak Weber to lease his land to the Catholic Church so that the Turtle Island Jesuit School could be built. At the time, both Lily and McGeesey were children, and the lease protected them from outside influence. Is there an old technicality about a woman owning land? Lily and McGeesey each had their own plots. "However, there's a battle brewing over the rights and interests of the leasee," Nowaski remarked. "Rights of the lessee?" "For improvements done to the property since the lease was signed," Ayanna explained. "Oh, brother. Surely the Catholic Church isn't interested in those old buildings." Both Nowaski and Archer paused with puzzled looks on their faces. "We're not talking about the old school, are we?" Mays asked. Both shook their heads, Archer supplying, "The state park is built on leased land. That big bridge spanning the Blue Knife River, built on state lands." "That's not even part of the reservation," Chuck protested. "Apparently it once was. It's the southernmost 40 acres that is in dispute. As part of the infrastructure committee, you're going to have an opportunity to complicate this transaction. Since the state of Minnesota invested millions into the bridge," Mays finished, "and the state park." His aide was one step ahead of him, as usual. The sudden shift to the state park threw him off a bit. He'd expected the news to focus on the northern plots. "So, who owns it, Paul?" "Nobody seems to know," Nowaski admitted. "Right now, the legal lawsuits are piling up, knowing that eventually a resolution is going to be made with the state of Minnesota over the value of those 2 investments on that property." Chuck looked at all 3 people at the table. "Our priority is to make sure the land remains part of the Mizhike Reservation, right?" All 3 nodded. Chuck felt his heart pounding in his chest and he realized the implications: the cave and the missing Philosopher's Stone. Ownership of the land meant private archaeologists or bulldozers could be brought in. What's step one? The first lawsuit is between the Shakopee Metawakanton Sioux and the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. This rattled Chuck, who thought he had a good handle on current events. Excuse me, why? This is where it gets complicated, Archer answered. Currently, the state of Minnesota recognizes 12 federal reservations, including the Mesquite Band of Ojibwe. But the heir to the property, Frank Thunderface, is Sioux. So the Shakopee folks believe the property should be recognized as a Sioux reservation rather than being part of an Ojibwe reservation. This is a ploy to steal control of the property. Seriously. It goes back to battles fought in the 1700s between the Chippewa and the Sioux, Nowaski explained. Archer added, as well as some conflicts in the 1890s, which the Shakopee Sioux are using to try to claim the entire reservation. What? Chuck recoiled, needing to keep his profanities to himself. Okay, so when that lawsuit is dismissed, then what? Nowaski answered, Frank Thunderface is suing Triton Corporation for possession of the western shore, since the bridge spanned the property and thus belongs to his claim. I can't say I understand that one as well. I've waited all these years to do my part, and I've been caught with my pants down. He took a moment before forming his next question. Is there any disputing that Frank Thunderface is the heir and title holder of the land? Archer once again grinned with her bitter eyes. Once these first cases are litigated, he'll be in a fight with the state of Minnesota, which is where you'll come in with the infrastructure committee. Chuck exhaled a long, steady breath before moving on. Which way are we playing this? Do we want to drive up the price of the bridge, drive the price of the bridge high or low? None of them had an answer. He tried to gauge how much trouble they were in from Ayana's face, but as always, she had a serious poker face. For now, we wait for the fight to come to us, Archer said, indicating that this part of the conversation was finished. The conversation shifted back to immediate issues facing the Iron Range and the Bois Forte Reservation. Nowaski and Archer were allies, but only as long as it served them. Luckily, Chuck realized there was still time to do some legal maneuvering, and once they parted ways with Nowaski and Archer, Ayana immediately got on her own phone. Chuck had to wait for her to unlock the passenger door, and it wasn't until they returned to the office that she explained their response strategy. When the day was finally over, Chuck found the bag phone under his seat and punched in the number. When the line connected, he said, Carson, I've got a special assignment for you. What's going on? We need to get ahead of a problem. Actually, we need to catch up. We're already getting our asses kicked and we didn't even know it. What's going on? First, we need to find an expert on land rights. Land rights? It looks like EOS is trying to make a move on the MBO reservation, so I need you to do a little digging on a fellow by the name of Frank Thunderface. Find out where he's getting his legal representation. That should help you start on who's funding his move on MBO land. Frank Thunderface. I got it. While Ayana knew the law, his son knew how to get around the internet. While you're at it, I need you to investigate the lease between the Weber family and the Catholic Church. When you retain a land rights attorney, I need them to study those documents and have a no-bullshit assessment of how much trouble we're in. We've got a different kind of fight coming to us. Chapter 21, God of Seizures. Madeira, September 24th, 1997. Tom Doby stared out at the black expanse of the Atlantic, looking for the lights of the island, but instead saw only his reflection staring back at him. It wasn't supposed to be this messy. It seemed like just a few days ago that he'd come to Madeira as the conquering hero when he transported the Ancient One to the secure complex. He'd given the world a plausible death for Levi McPherson, and the folks in Hiawatha County ate it up hook, line, and sinker. Shortly after that, he orchestrated a military strike to take out the leaders of Vendita. when they emerged at a gathering in Australia. Have I made matters worse? All of his victories had turned to ash over the past decade, and once again he returned to the headquarters of EOS with bad news. By the time the plane landed and his shuttle took him to the mountain complex, the sun was coming up from the east. Rather than finding rest, he waited for folks in Madeira to wake and found his favorite spot along the balcony to have a coffee. In previous centuries, the Order of Eos had used the island as a base of operations, and once again, it became the capital of a global empire. Its heir apparent, Maddie Sinclair, cut ties with her business duties to oversee the rehabilitation of a god. "I thought you hated this place," Maddie Sinclair said, breaking the silence of the morning. She still looked young and beautiful, but seemed to bear the weight of responsibility. Her red hair was pulled into a ponytail rather than flowing wildly over her shoulders. "When you left for Albany, I assumed it would be the last I'd see of you." "It's good to see you, too." "Your presence is concerning, Tom. Are you a harbinger of doom, or will this be good news?" "Important news deserve to be delivered in person." "A little bit of both," Dobie answered honestly. "I want to speak to you personally, since many of the problems I'm about to discuss continue because of oversights in the past." "Have you come to fall on your own sword?" Maddie teased. "You're too hard on yourself. I've said it before. You are a good and faithful servant." "We play our parts, don't we?" "Yes, we do." She paused. "So what does my faithful servant have to say?" "Do you want the good news or the bad news first?" "The bad, of course." "Vendetta has been playing possum." "What is that supposed to mean?" "They've been faking their own deaths to fool their enemies." She remained playful instead of acknowledging the threat. "Yes, Tom, I understand your quaint American phrase. How has Vendetta been playing possum? Compared to Delhut, her father had been too paranoid about threats, but she seemed unflappable." "She trusts me to act. Back in 1988, when I conducted Project Red Thunderbird, it seems as if our success might not have been as successful as we believed." Her eyes narrowed. "Remind me again about Project Red Thunderbird? I was a bit distracted at the time." "Is she toying with me?" "Do you want me to go all the way back to 1188? "I'm not in a hurry this morning, are you?" "Fine, I'll skip all the boring details. At one time, the Order of Eos and Vendetta were together, but just like the Christian church broke apart in the Great Schism, Eos fractured because of differing beliefs regarding the ancient prophecies. For the most part, Vendetta remained toothless and obscure, little more than an underground cult with peculiar beliefs. Since their beliefs were rooted in our beliefs, from time to time, they'd come out of the darkness to try to steal or stop our work." "Like your nemesis Chirani Basant," Maddie added, showing she did remember the purpose of Operation Red Thunderbird. "What do they want, Tom?" Tom shrugged. "In the 1600s and 1700s, as the Priory of Ormus, it appeared they were in a race to acquire the Philosopher's Stone and locate the Ancient One, which made it appear as if they held similar beliefs about the old prophecies. Then they suddenly vanished. By the 1800s, they seemed to change philosophies and appeared to support communist agendas." This seemed to puzzle Maddie. "To what end?" "The destruction of all superstitions, from Christianity to Eos." Maddie crossed her arms in agitation. "They privately believe our prophecies about the end of the world, but they believe they can stop it from coming if they destroy the ability for the prophecy to come true. Like Herod killing the infants in Bethlehem." Maddie chuckled at the comparison, but then began to chew on her lip. "But something has changed recently?" "To my great shame," Tom confessed. In recent decades, Vendita has turned to science as a mechanism for spiritual evolution. They went from undermining and attacking other religions to supporting the idea that humanity is on the brink of a genetic evolution that will transform us into gods. Are we talking about the X-Men? Laugh if you must, but I severely underestimated them as some misguided New Age cult. In the 1980s, they operated in the open and invested their limited resources into genetic engineering programs. I remember you telling me about this. They were creating their own supreme leader, which is why I allowed you to get our revenge in Australia. What went wrong? They knew that we knew. Come again. I was duped. All the intel pointed to something major happening at Mount Uluru in early September of 1988. All the major players were supposed to be there. Chirani Basant, their genetic engineer Leah Kaufman, and the young boy who'd been genetically engineered to evolve into some sort of messiah for humanity upon the completion of the ritual. What does this have to do with what we're doing here with the Ancient One? Maddie asked with annoyance. Tom ignored her. We acted decisively. We struck the shepherd and scattered the flock. I assumed it would destroy Vendita, but it was a ruse. Vendita knew what I was going to do. How would they know that? By sacrificing an eye. To buy time? I should have known better. I should have taken each of those bodies from the morgue in Australia and confirmed things myself. They took a page right out of my own playbook and played switcheroo with false corpses. None of the bodies in Australia were who they were supposed to be. Basant, Kaufman, the child, it was all an elaborate hoax. I don't care about Australia. What's happening now? What's gotten you to come all the way here? Tom found it hard to swallow. He shamed his family legacy. Vendita is making a play to secure the Mizhike Band of Ojibwe Reservation. Whoa. Maddie recoiled. When did we suddenly start talking about Lake Manitou? While I was following the old Del Hut rules of letting the dust settle and showing patience, Vendita went and found the Thunderface heir, who suddenly found himself in possession of 40 acres of MBO reservation and legal claims that could threaten all of our plans. I don't understand, Tom. Vendita is after the Philosopher's Stone. If they win their little court battle, they'll have nothing stopping them from methodically searching the property for it. We don't even know that it's there. Yet Vendita thinks it's there. What does that tell you? They've been watching from a distance, poking around to test theories. They knew we were going to hit them in Australia, and I think I know how. I don't follow, Tom. Your father knew the truth. He was the fool that revealed it to Basant. I need to have a conversation with the old goat. As one of the 3 Grand Masters of the Order of Eos, Ross Delhut showed patience while old Alistair Sinclair, another Grand Master, panicked when he enlisted the help of Chirani Basant to spy on the young leader. Unaware of Basant's connection to Vendita, Sinclair feared the Delhut strategy and wanted proof of what they had at Lake Manitou. Delhut's generational plan of slow and steady excavation of the site combined with another patient plan, development of an ancient language. Even before the Order of Eos had absolute proof of what laid under Lake Manitou, the Delhut family understood the need to be able to communicate with any risen god from before the dawn. So the profits from North Star Steel went into funding linguistic studies for decades, while the Sinclair and Tarrant families scoffed at the efforts of the Delhuts to examine mythology and legend. The scientific study narrowed into a small pocket of human population in the deep forests of Finland that had been largely unchanged for millennium. While the modern families within the Order of Eos had certainly evolved each generation to operate within society, they still held to the ancient prophecies, and the marriage of language and prophecy gave Delhuts an order of knowers, with the ability to speak an ancient language that had seemingly been washed from the face of the earth. Aaron Miku, one of the exotic specimens pulled from the deep woods of Delhut's program, now held the reins of a quest generations in development. Each time Tom met with the old goat, he gave considerable thought to putting a bullet in her head, lest she betray the Order of Eos. "Good morning," Dobie greeted the old woman as the old woman stepped out of her private apartment and into the common areas. Aaron Miku gave little attention to Maddie, who, like herself, lived at the complex in Madeira. She narrowed her eyes as she analyzed him. "What is this?" I need to know how Vendita knew the future. "I'm not here to interfere in your efforts, so there is no need to be defensive. I'm only here to understand so I can assess the situation. If Miku has common sense, she knows she is only a tool for us." "Have you found what the master seeks?" Miku asked. Tom had looked, but finding the Philosopher's Stone was a needle in a haystack. Plus, Delhut cautioned him against bold actions in Minnesota. "I need to understand your prior visit to Leyrod. When you were taken to Uderbrunner, you spoke to one of the Norns living in the tree. We acted because of what she told you was going to happen in Australia. Surely you remember this?" Back in 1986, Aaron Miku returned from a trip to the willow tree growing along the banks of the Jordan River, near Benias. Since the days of the Templar Knights, the sacred location had been a key to the Order of Eos. In the old tales, the location was known as Uderbrunner, the wellspring of Urd, in one of the three places on Earth where the magical tree Leyrod's roots connected to the world of men. Virgelmir, the bubbling, boiling spring located in the frozen land of Niflheim, turned out to be Lake Manitou in Minnesota. The third root, Mimisbrunner, located in the land of giants, existed deep in the Himalayas. How could I forget? It was a day that confirmed my... Aaron Miku knew all of this. How could I forget? It was a day that confirmed my beliefs not only in the magic of the world tree, but also of the gods of old. Tom knew the old religion well. Yes, and the Norns are some of the gods of old. They are. In the common words, they are known as Urd, the Dandy, and Skuld, the Weavers of Fate. And which one did you meet within the tree, Tom pressed? It was Skuld, the one who will be. How could you tell it was Skuld? Did she tell you her name? No, but the three Norns are an old crone, who represents the past, the mother, who represents the present, and the young maiden, who represents the future. I spoke with a child, a fair-haired maiden, likely only 5 or 6 years old. So you trusted a child, Tom scoffed. Do you still recall exactly what she said to you? Of course. She spoke of betrayal. She spoke of the trickster who threatened to destroy the world. Just like Odin tried to prevent Ragnarok by seeking knowledge from Leyrod, she guided us from the future so that we could change the present. Yes, I'm not questioning the accuracy of this vision. I sent men to stop Vendita from bringing their prophecies to life in the deserts of Australia. How did the Norns know it was going to happen? What is this child who spoke to you in the tree? How do we know if we can trust her? Perhaps you do not understand the Norns. They are immortals, greater in a way than Odin and the Aesir, or Nord and Vanir, or lesser beings such as mankind. They tend to the great tree and nourish it. From their perspective, under the great tree, They are able to see the past, present, and future as threads of time. McCoo scoffed. Trust? Trust? These beings shape the fabric of reality. Yeah. Are you immortal? Of course not, Aaron McCoo huffed. Then let me compare this with a modern metaphor. The willow tree along the Jordan River is like a telephone, and the roots of the old tree mystically pass through our world only to come out at two other locations. While you are holding on to the branches and roots in Israel, you could appear to someone in the other two locations as the old crone Erd. How could that be when I'm not Erd? I think I understand your concern, Tom, Maddie interjected. You think the spirit in the tree could have misled us about the future? Spirit? Tom mocked. Both of you were so desperate to prove this shit was true that you never questioned how it worked or who was giving us information. I don't understand what's upset you, Tom. Either the young Norn lied to us, or else Vendita also found out. Trani Basant is laughing at us. At their silence, Tom raised his hands and walked out of the apartment area. Back in 1962, he was still just a boy. Old Alistair Sinclair had taken Red Dobie, Trani Basant, and a Carillion witch to seek answers about Lake Manitou, only to have their efforts end in disaster and death. The collapse of the Nicollet Dam changed the geography of Lake Manitou, and after, Uncle Red, William Olcott, Sarah Olivantier, and Trani Basant all vanished from the face of the earth. Twice the Sinclairs acted upon information learned from the sacred tree, and twice the guiding hand of prophecy seemed to work against Eos. I can protect these people from tangible threats, but how can I protect them from voices in the tree? He knew the magic of the tree had existed since the dawn, but even in the old Norse tales, trusting the tree came at a great sacrifice. He needed to understand how the Australia mission was sabotaged. Tom stepped in front of the panel of one-way windows and sat upon a swivel chair. Behind him, the world's most advanced observation technology sat quiet, and the room on the opposite side of the glass remained dark. Maddie Sinclair joined him a few minutes later. My apologies, he said. I should not have acted so impulsively in 1988. Basant lives, and now matters are worse. This is why the Dobies have always been soldiers and servants rather than leaders within the Order of Eos. The Sinclairs were always too aggressive, and the Delhots too conservative, but their leadership weathered each and every storm. Let her figure this out. Shut your mouth. Give your updates. Let her decide. Maddie seemed unaffected. Despite your concerns, we've made quite a bit of progress since your last visit. How so? Hypnosis, Maddie explained with a proud grin. One of the psychiatrists suggested it, and the progress has been quite remarkable. It feels like we've really made progress. Dim lights came on inside the room. The 16-year-old body of Levi McPherson had transformed into muscular perfection, a thick chest, defined abdomens, and bulging biceps. His dark hair cascaded onto his shoulders. Just a few years ago, the vessel had weakened to the point of needing life support. How is this possible? We've managed to tap into the Ancient One's subconscious, Maddie said. It's not full communication, but Aaron Miku is able to communicate and instruct basic commands, and thus he's able to exercise and strengthen his body. Like sleepwalking, Dobie observed. For the first year, the spirit of the Ancient One aggressively tried to take control of the host body that once belonged to Levi McPherson, resulting in garbled screams and erratic muscle control. Like a raging toddler, the Ancient One would have moments of control, only to have it end in a full body seizure. My father's efforts are finally reaping some rewards, Maddie added. It's been a lot of trial and error, but our team of linguists have been bridging the gap between Aaron Miku and the Ancient One. But only while he sleeps? Maddie nodded. Unlike a normal infant who steadily learns control of motor functions and language, the Ancient One had to relearn everything like a patient suffering from a stroke. Beyond that, a lifetime of memories clouded efforts to begin anew with a foreign body. If we'd listened to Delhut, the resurrection of the Ancient One would have been a success. This is another of my failures. Perhaps the news about Vendita could be seen as good news, Maddie offered. They are probably preparing for revenge as we speak. How so? You remember your history. Our forefathers faced the vast wilderness of the American continent. They were searching for that needle in a haystack. Yet our enemies sent little French scientists on a quest to find what we couldn't find. And thanks to the stubbornness of the Delhuts, we were able to find the resting place of the Ancient One. Thousands of years led to this moment, so don't despair that it's taken a few years to take command of this prophecy. We've woken a sleeping god, Tom. We will be rewarded for this when he takes his throne. Her optimism, like her beauty, often disarmed him, and he realized how she spoke words of wisdom. What then? We let Vendita do our dirty work at Lake Manitou? If we had the Philosopher's Stone, we'd be able to finish this resurrection quickly. But even with the poor cards we've been dealt, we're making progress. The Ancient One is still young. I know you fear the ticking clock, but we have time. For now, we'll continue with our hypnosis strategy while you focus on Hiawatha County. Acting in Australia had been a mistake. Maddie was right. Let them find the stone, Tom, and then take it from them.